Hi, welcome to our show, Russ on Flowers. I'm your host, Russ. Today we wanted to put a quick shout out to Steve. He's in the arcade today. He's actually in the arcade, and I think I heard that he was bowling out there, so we're going to go take a look and see what he's up to, see what kind of tricks he's playing today on the show. So let's go take a look and see what Steve's up to. Nice one, Steve. I didn't know you were such a good bowler. Today we're going to be talking about a continuation of vasing, okay, a sequel to what we've been talking about for the last few weeks. Today we're going to be talking about peeling roses, floating roses, and working with gerbers and floating gerbers, okay? One of my favorites. You can go a long way with floating flowers, and it will give you a look that is equal to small arrangements and large arrangements depending on the venue and the occasion, okay? Again, Russ on Flowers, Russ Wholesale Flowers, bulk flowers, bringing the flower shop experience to your home is what we're all about. You know, being able to use a mass array of flowers for any occasion and being able to either arrange them in vases, or floating them, or depending on what it is. Our shows, check out our shows, and we'll be answering any kind of questions that you guys have. Okay, funny story, I was working on a job, we were floating flowers in a pool, okay? Don't keep your filters running if you're floating things in your pool. By the time the guests arrived, all the product had been all gathered in one corner, and we weren't able to redistribute the flowers, or the candles for that matter, throughout the pool. It was a total disaster. But so if you're going to be floating things in your pool, make sure you turn off all your pumps and stuff, okay? So today we're going to start by talking about floating roses. Obviously, if you're trying to float this rose, it's just going to tip over on its side, and it's not going to have the effect that we're kind of looking for. Neither will you. So we are going to be talking about pulling the flowers back, petals back, and actually making something that's going to be twice this size, and then in that way you will be able to float it, okay? The gerbers, it's kind of a no-brainer. These are great floating flowers. Now in weeks to come we're going to be talking about floating other flowers like orchids and lilies, and another array of flowers on top of that. So today, this is what's going to take the most time on today's show, is how you're going to peel back your roses in order to allow them to float. And then we'll be talking about different ways that you can float them in the most inexpensive ways. So what you guys are going to want to do is start with this. When you're working with roses and wanting to float them, you need to take them out of water for about 2 hours, okay? So the petals become limp, all right? If they are hydrated, they'll crack and tear, okay? They are easily torn, all right? So you want to kind of clean them off. These are kind of bruised petals. You see the outer petals they're a little thicker, they have protective coverings, and so you guys want to just pop those off and then begin the exercise. But make sure they're not hydrated for like 2 hours, okay? They'll be a lot easier to work with. And in doing that, you just want to get your thumb underneath the petal and kind of turn the petal at the base, okay? And continue to do that. Don't go in, go around the flower, okay? So you're pulling it back, and continue to do that all the way around the flower, okay? Until you've dissolved all the petals, all right? And you will come up with this flower that's obviously it's going to be twice or 3 times as big as that. And this will allow you, the span of the petals will allow you to float it, all right? So you're peeling these back, and depending on the vase, the containers that you're using to float, or if you're going to float it in glass, you want to cut the stems back as far as you can, because there will be a glare and you'll be able to see the stem. So you don't want the stem extended down to the bottom of the containers. You always want to cut it kind of flush, okay, which is towards the top, okay? And the most inexpensive way to do this is using rock and using a 50-cent tray. This is a plastic dish, a loamy dish, and we did some river rock, okay? And what you want to do is, when you're cutting this, is you want to keep it down maybe ½ inch so it's extended down into the water. These trays don't hold a lot of water, okay? And that being said, you have to have the extension on the stem long enough to go down to the bottom of these containers. But if you float it in something like a dish, you're going to see those stems, so you want to make it the cut really flush, okay? And to speed it up, I have finished an actual flower for you guys to see of what it's going to look like. And once you're done with these flowers, you want to hydrate them for an hour so they rehydrate. These petals will not look limp anymore, but they'll actually fill out. Okay, this one, you know, obviously didn't hydrate it for an hour, but there's the look that you're looking for. Okay. All right, and the stem is going all the way to the bottom of the loamy dish. All right, if you were going to float it in the vase, cut it right before the bulk of where the stem gathers here at the top. Cut it there so it's not hanging down again to the bottom of the vase, and then it's floatable. All right. Now, when working with gerbers, it's the same thing. This is very easy to float. You just cut it and float it, right? There's no peeling back of any petals or anything. Again, if you're working with loamy dishes, you want to keep the stems a little bit longer so they're going all the way to the base of the container, right? It's a great look. Gerbers come in probably 400 different colors. So, and we carry the majority of them, so you can pick and choose as you wish. Again, if you're going to float them in water, you want to cut the stem a little shorter, and you have a floating gerber. It's a gorgeous look. Just a gorgeous look. So we're talking about floating them in loamies with some river rock, or floating them in a glass tray, whether it's a, you know, if you're doing something, you can do this in fish bowls, you could do this in squares, you could do this in rounds. There's a ton of different options for you guys to choose from. Okay, this week with roses, gerbers, and weeks to come we're going to be talking about other varieties. Try sticking that in your ass, Steve. Okay, Q&A time. Email me at russonflowers. We'll answer your questions, continue to answer your questions. We look forward to your emails every single week. First question, Russ, how do you store soaked flowers without crushing them? Box them. Put them in a box, use them in a box, and wrap them with tissue is the best way to go about doing that. Okay. Question number 2, Russ, how many flowers are used in a mid-sized centerpiece for a wedding? I would probably use, depending if you're using fillers or not. So you're using fillers, you're using focal flowers, and you got some line flowers in there, you got greens, and so you're talking about maybe 18 flowers. Okay, 18 flowers and some greens. Russ, how do you make a flower crown out of fresh flowers? Well, there's a few different ways you can use it. That's from Fred in Cleveland. Flower crown. So I'm assuming it's like a halo, and in using that, you're going to be you use a needle. There's a little bit bigger needle, or you can use wire and make a needle out of that. And you can, the best way, you know, if you use fish line is really good. And if you use low test fish line, because it stretches a little bit, it might help. Okay, you can use yarn too, but you know, a lot of it is done with fish line. All right, that's Fred in Cleveland. Russ, any idea for flowers for a fresh flower wreath? Fresh flower wreath meaning what? Funeral piece, or I'm not sure. Jen from Chicago. Any ideas for flowers for a fresh flower wreath? So, if you're, the best for wreaths is carnations. You know, mini carnations, big carnations. That would be my suggestion. Russ, I need to know how to freeze fresh flowers from a funeral. You can't freeze them. You can preserve them. In shows to come, we'll be using preservatives and show you how to preserve some flowers. It's not an easy process, but if you wanted to dry them, you can hang them upside down, you know, with wires in a room that's, you know, mid-temp, 70, 75 degrees. It's Barbara, San Diego. You can't freeze them because you'll fry them out, okay? That concludes our show at Russ on Flowers. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.